Good evening, and thank you for tuning in tonight to Chaim on the Radio. I am New York City Councilman Chaim Deitch, and I'm filling in tonight for Zeb Renner here on Talkline Communications Network. As always, we are joined by my co-host, Dr. Faye Zakheim, who has joined us via phone this evening. It's great to be back with you this week, Faye. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about tonight.
I'm super excited. I looked at the guests that we're having tonight, and this is going to be incredibly enlightening, educational. I just can't wait. I'm really excited. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I just want to give you a shout-out. Last week we had Ladies' Night, and I just want to give you did a phenomenal job, and my wife, Sarah, as well as Allison Josephs from Jew in the City, Linda Sedaka from Moms of Mitzvah, Yelena Machnin from Brighton Beach Bid, and of course, last but not least, well, my wife is not last but not least, but I just want to give a shout-out also to my Deputy Chief of Staff, Tova Chasanoff-Rosenfeld, who did a phenomenal job last week being your co-host. So
she was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, and the ladies were unbelievable. It was a brilliant idea, Councilman, but we missed you a lot, but it really was a show of powerful ladies in New York, and it was an honor to be hosting together with Tova. She's amazing.
It's always great to hear from the ladies who are behind us men. So, it was very special. We have, like you mentioned, we have some very special guests with us tonight live in the air. 3 of my colleagues in the New York City Council will be with us in just a few minutes to speak about some of the most pressing issues that are plaguing our city. And we'll be taking calls this week, and we encourage our listeners to chime in and participate in our conversation. The call-in number here in the studio is 718-303-9090. Don't be shy. Listeners, don't be shy. 718-303-9090. So we are going to take a commercial break, and when we return, we'll be joined, like I said, by 3 of my colleagues in the New York City Council, Councilman Kalman Yeger, Bob Holden, and Eric Ulrich. So we will be right back after this short commercial break.
TCN, Talkline Communications Network Radio, America's #1 Jewish program.
Welcome back, and you're listening to Chaim on the Radio, 620 on the AM dial, listening to Talkline Communications Network, and I'm filling in for Zeb Renner. I'm here live on the air with my co-host, Dr. Faye Zakheim. In just a moment, we'll be joined by 3 of my colleagues who are coming on the show tonight to speak about what's been going on in the city lately. And if you've been following the news, you know that shootings in New York City are up by over 100%. Every day we hear the news of more shootings, some ending in fatalities. This past weekend alone, a 1-year-old child was murdered at a family cookout by 2 gunmen. Meanwhile, violent protests continue to take the streets, and on Sunday, in Bay Ridge was an anti-police protest into a flag burning, and cops and civilians clashed. And yesterday, an anti-police march from the Brooklyn Bridge turned dangerous as, again, police officers and rioters clashed. Several cops were injured, including the chief of department of the New York City Police Department. That's the highest-ranking uniform officer in the department, and a video circulated online showing protesters beating police officers over the head with a metal cane. Another video that went around today showed protesters accumulating baseball bats at that protest, like right before the protest. And for the last few weeks, we talked about the liberal effort to defund the New York City Police Department, and as I mentioned previously, I was one of just a few council members to vote against defunding the New York City Police Department. And tonight we're welcoming 3 of my colleagues who also voted against the budget, and that is New York City Councilman Kalman Yeger, Councilman Robert Holden, and Eric Ulrich. Councilman Yeger is a frequent guest in our show. As our listeners know, he represents the 44th Council District, which includes parts of Borough Park, Midwood, Kensington, and Bensonhurst. And Councilmember Bob Holden represents the 30th District in Queens, including the neighborhoods of Glendale, Maspeth, Middle Village, Ridgewood, Woodhaven, and Woodside. And finally, Councilman Eric Ulrich represents the 32nd District in Queens, including the neighborhoods of Bell Harbor, Breezy Point, Broad Channel, Howard Beach, Richmond Hill, and Rockaway Parkway. So welcome, colleagues. I haven't seen you in months. We all worked from home, and City Hall is closed for us, and the 250 Broadway, where we have our office, is off limits until probably September. and we chat on the phone and we chat on Zoom. So welcome live on the air.
It's great to be back, Chaim. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.
And we have Eric and Bob.
Yep. Shalom. Hi, how are you?
Shalom. How are you doing? Just this week, the beginning of the week, I met with the mother of 1-year-old Davil Gardner in Bed-Stuy, and he was 1 year old who got shot on the street, and he was 1 year old with the family. The family was having a barbecue in front of a park, and someone just came by, and there was a drive-by shooting and shot a 1 year old. And this happened in Bed-Stuy, and I went down to Bed-Stuy. It's not in my district, and I paid my condolences and on behalf of my district to the family. And I also joined they had a rally in the corner, which was actually, it wasn't only a rally, it was more of a discussion about what we can do about all the gun violence that's happening. And, criminals are getting more and more emboldened every single day. And only 4 days ago, we have seen 15 shootings in a 15-hour span. That's one shooting per hour. So there are three reasons I believe we could all agree on why crime is up. And let's talk about the three things for now. And you could disagree with me. And I want to tell you that to our listeners, this is like the Common Sense Caucus in the New York City Council. We are minorities in the City Council, so we need our listeners to listen to us tonight, and we're going to tell you why crime is up, and we'll come up with some solutions, and that would be for our listeners to call up their council members and to demand for them to, when they represent our constituents, their constituents, they should vote for our public safety. So number one, let's talk about bail reform, and I want my colleagues to talk about it. And number two, we're going to speak about the diaphragm portion of the chokehold bill that was just signed by the mayor yesterday. And number three, we're going to be speaking about defunding the NYPD by $1 billion. It was actually more than $1 billion. It was $1 billion plus $500 million in capital money. So let's start with let's go with Bob. Bob is, I think, the chair of the Common Sense Caucus.
No, not quite. I think Kalman is. But I think we have a great caucus. We talk often, and I think we're few and far between on the city council. Though we need more of common sense, obviously, with what's happening today. I haven't seen New York City like this, and I go back because I'm probably
the senior member.
I don't want to say. Well, I am the senior member, at least of the caucus, and I've lived through the 70s and 80s in New York City, and even the early 90s until Rudy Giuliani came in and turned New York City around, and made it the safest big city. And de Blasio tried to push that, like we're the safest big city, until all his measures took effect. Like you mentioned.
Bob, could we call him by his nickname? I think you have a nickname for him.
The dope from Park Slope?
That's it, yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry. Is Eric on the line here? Because Eric has
better names, but this is a family-friendly program.
Okay. So we do. We have to really. Are we prime time yet, or no? We're not. So
well, we're the Common Sense Caucus, which means we work at 10 o'clock at night.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's way past my bedtime, but I'll try to summarize this. Where we're seeing a resurgence of crime because, like you mentioned, I mentioned bail reform, obviously, and that took effect January 1st, and we saw immediately a rise in crime. Is that surprising to anybody out there, that you're going to let more people out? I mean, as long as they say, now this is how it's interpreted, as long as you don't commit a violent crime, yet if you break into my house, you walk right in front of me, and you break in, you steal some things, you leave, you're certainly out the next day or the same day, and then you come back again the next day and you burglarize my house and you're out again. So it's a revolving door, and we've seen that in the history of New York City, and we learned from that. Certainly from the 80s and in the 90s when we had over 2,000 murders, but now we haven't learned, at least de Blasio hasn't, and some of my colleagues in Albany haven't, but we're we're really on a road to disaster at this point, and I hope that we get somebody in there next year in the election that will straighten us out, because New York City is not livable anymore. It really isn't.
So let's talk about the diaphragm portion of the bill. We all know that there's a chokehold bill that was passed, and the chokehold bill was actually to codify a current existing it was already prohibited by the New York City Police Department to do any chokeholds, and this bill was supposed to codify that current protocol that the New York City Police Department has. But it was added in the chokehold bill, the diaphragm part, where a officer cannot kneel on someone's back, on stomach. So basically, if they're making an arrest, they have to beg that person to put their hands behind their back. And we have been seeing how criminals have been resisting arrest. I mean, every single day we've been seeing.
And I voted against that, Chaim. I voted against that bill.
So let's talk about
I'm one of only 3 members that voted against that.
Let's talk about how important it is to make sure that we repeal that. And I serve in the Public Safety Committee, and we had 8 members on the Public Safety Committee, and I was the only one who voted against it. I voted against every single police reform bill, and my colleagues were looking at me shocked, like, what is this guy, the biggest racist around? But let's talk about why it's important that we need to repeal that portion of the diaphragm bill, because even when we're asking for anti-crime to come back, it's still not enough, because the cops are terrified to do their job, because they could be charged with a misdemeanor if a person they're holding down is saying, oh yeah, the cop had their knee on my back or stomach.
Right, and how do you, I don't know if anybody on this call has been in a fight, in a street brawl, but you're not thinking about, I can't grab, by the way, I mentioned to you, Chaim, when we talked about this, because we're looking at legislation to correct the bill, but what we have to do is examine how do you, if you're fighting for your life, and I mentioned that every time somebody, a perp, fights a cop, resists arrest, a gun is involved. It's the police officer's gun. And certainly there's always a weapon involved. So when you're fighting somebody, you're struggling, are you going to think about, I can't grab him by the diaphragm, I can't grab him by the chest, I can't grab him by the neck, and he can grab your gun? Are you thinking about that? That's why the cops don't want to get involved now. They're very afraid. And this bill by Rory Lanceman is a joke. It's insane, and I agree that it is insane. And it languished from 2014 for a good reason, because it's absurd. And it's really a major cause why cops are demoralized at this point, because they don't want to put their hands on anybody now.
Correct.
That's how bad it's gotten.
And Bob, if you remember, that piece about the diaphragm was not in the original version of the bill that had languished. It was added literally at the last second, rammed down everybody's throats, and it was done really in an opportunistic fashion to take advantage of the current language and the current debate about what was going on in New York.
Exactly.
By people in our council who hate cops and who aren't embarrassed to admit it. They hate cops. We always hear this language about what white privilege is. You know what white privilege is? White privilege is living in Park Slope and telling folks in Brownsville they shouldn't have any cops. Or living in Brownstone, Brooklyn, and telling folks in Bushwick that they don't deserve to have any cops. Or living in Kew Garden Hills and telling folks in Southeast Queens that they don't deserve to have any cops. That's white privilege. And that's what we're seeing in the council. Some of this ridiculous conversation about the 35,000 people, the vast majority of whom work hard and honorable every single day of their lives to keep us safe. And we've heard this remark from Bill Bratton frequently about how in a city of 8.5 million people, the crimes are being committed really by just a few thousand. It's those that we're trying to protect ourselves from, and that the police are trying to protect us from.
Yeah. Sure. Speaking about Bill Bratton, I had a conversation with him this morning. And I'm hoping that next Thursday he's going to be joining us here live in the studio. And I just want to ask Eric. Eric, I know you once told me you had a brawl once. I mean, let's talk about the diaphragm and tell me your thoughts on it, and how important it is that we repeal that portion of the bill, of the chokehold bill.
Well, let me just say this first. I was on NBC today and I spoke, to Melissa Russo about how disappointed I was that Bill de Blasio did not condemn in the strongest possible terms the attack on New York City police officers yesterday on the Brooklyn Bridge. I really thought it represented a new low for the administration that the mayor of the city of New York would not defend the cops, even when they are physically assaulted in broad daylight and attacked for simply wearing the uniform. I thought it was a dereliction of duty, and the mayor really did a disservice not only to the police department but to the people of the city who he is supposed to be serving. So, I was really disappointed in the mayor because time and time again, you almost hope that he does the right thing, but he just lets you down every single time. We've known for a while that the mayor is not supporting the police department. He says he does, but then, everything that he does as mayor really contradicts any goodwill that he expresses at a police funeral or a graduation. And you see that played out time and time again. And it's not only the police unions that are against the mayor. It really is the rank and file. I talked to cops in the 102 precinct, the 106 precinct, the 100 precinct. I talked to cops all across the city. They know that this mayor does not have their backs. And they feel underpaid, underappreciated, undervalued. And they've got such a difficult job. And you would think that in a time like this, when crime is on the rise, when people are being hurt, when emotions are running high, that the mayor would be somebody that wants to bring people together. And what does he do? He's all about the divisive politics and the race baiting and everything else that he's been doing since he ran for mayor. And, it's just very demoralizing. It's very disappointing. And like I said, there are times that even me, I'm a Republican and I never voted for de Blasio. I don't agree with de Blasio. I'm not promoting him in any way, but I do want him to succeed sometimes because when we're up against the wall and when the mayor succeeds, we all succeed. We should all want the mayor or the president, for that matter, to succeed. And he keeps letting you down. And this is the tale of two de Blasios. He says one thing and he does another. He doesn't support the cops, even when crime is on the rise and we need the mayor and we need the police department to work together to bring crime down again. He just fails every single time. And that's what we're seeing right now. No
Eric,
different.
Even as you're talking, I'm looking at a tweet that says that tonight alone, just tonight, there are already 4 shot and several stabbings. I'm looking at a tweet from our former colleague, somebody who served in the predecessor council when the council was a little wiser, Sal Albanese. But that's what we're seeing, this hike in crime, and this nonsense, for example, that was being promoted by a member of Congress from your borough. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who said, well, look, if people are afraid of being evicted, crime's going to go up. They're not taking a loaf of bread or a container of milk. They're running around the city shooting people, and they're murdering people. They're killing, babies. This is the kind of vicious crime that only happens when the criminal element is allowed to believe that there are no repercussions for their crimes, and that they can go and run rampant throughout the city and do what they wish.
And that's because you have a war.
I want to add one thing. The violent crime hasn't moved into the neighborhoods where the white liberals live. And I don't want to, I don't want to say they're not experiencing crime, but I'm saying that the violent crimes that we're seeing taking place that are all over the tabloids and the papers right now are in communities of color and disadvantaged neighborhoods throughout the city. It hasn't moved into Park Slope yet. It hasn't moved into the Upper West Side of Manhattan yet. It hasn't really reared its ugly head in terms of the really violent crimes in Brownstone, Brooklyn, Long Island City, Queens. Once the crime starts creeping into those neighborhoods, then we'll see how fast these people come back and say, oh, where's the police protection? Where are the cops? We need the NYPD. Right now they want to disband the NYPD. They want to defund the NYPD. They're demoralizing the NYPD. They're doing a great disservice not only to themselves but to their fellow New Yorkers who really need that protection and the public safety.
And that's something I want to talk about a little bit later in the show, about the defunding part of the NYPD. And actually there were 8 members who voted against the budget for the right reason. And actually it was 7. 7 members voted against the budget because they didn't want to see the NYPD to be defunded, and that is that excluding me. I mean, I was number 8. It was Yeger, you, Eric, Holden, Mark Jonai, Reuvain Diaz, Steve Matteo, and Joe Borelli. And these members we voted against the budget because we did not want to see the NYPD to be defunded. I mean, especially at a time like this. And even when we don't see crime going up, we saw crime consistently going down. And we don't want to take away any funding from the New York City Police Department when things are going well. And what I want to talk about a little bit later is about how members of the public need to hold the elected officials accountable. But I want to take a few calls. The phones are ringing here off the hook. Let's take one call. Yeah, hi, you're in the air.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Chaim. This is Alan. I'm from the Brooklyn, the Flatbush area. I want to thank you and your guests and Eric for being voices of reason and standing up for our community. We have a public safety crisis right now. And I thought the gentleman just made a great point a moment ago. Once they start to stop killing each other in their neighborhoods, it's going to spill over into the others. De Blasio is what he is. He's got blood on his hands. But I want to make another comment. Dermot Shea, I believe you had him on a week ago or 2 weeks ago. He's got to go. He is an empty suit. He does nothing. He's never out on the street with his cops. What is going on? The guy's an embarrassment. I'm sorry.
Well, the worst move he made was disbanding the anti-crime unit, which takes guns off the streets. A friend of mine, his son is up in the Bronx. 2 weeks prior to disbanding anti-crime, him and his partner took 8 guns off the street in a 2 weeks period. And that's what they're good at. They're good at taking guns off the streets. So what does Dermot Shea do? He disbands the unit. And now you're seeing an explosion of gun violence. This is not rocket science. This is common sense. And for him to disband that unit, he should come out and say it wasn't my idea, or I think we should bring it back. We don't hear from him, though. You're right. You're 100% right.
So,
the cop got assaulted yesterday and beaten up, and literally, I thought it was attempted murder. Where was he? He comes out today, with some stupid statement that, where was he yesterday? He should have jumped out there and said, hey, I am the mayor. I'm not going to put my police force against this. The force needs to stand up. Shea needs to go.
So, Alan, I just also want you to realize that, anytime, people work for other people, and the commissioner works for the mayor. And there was a previous police commissioner who quit, and because of who the mayor was, and they had disagreements. Can you imagine that all the police officers out there who are disagreeing with what the mayor is doing and they all quit tomorrow? I mean, we're going to be in a terrible, much worse of a crisis here. We already have an attrition rate of 2,000 officers that are leaving the New York City Police Department. We just cut the New York City Council, for those who voted for the budget, they just cut 1,163 cops from graduating. And they're going to tell you all kinds of stories. I had one of my colleagues, I'm not going to name him, he's from the neighboring district, and he went to a roll call in the police department. And he spoke over there, and he spoke about how, oh no, we didn't fire any cops. Of course he didn't fire any cops. But you just stopped 1,160.
I'll name him, Chaim. You want me to name him?
You just name him.
Strager.
You just stopped 1,163 cops from joining and graduating the police department. Can you imagine 1,163 people who chose their career to protect and serve, and now they're out of a job? And then they also cut the cadet program. The cadet program are people from the minority community who gets thousands of dollars of grants for scholarships, and they just cut it completely. That means you're not going to have any more cadets.
And Chaim, this is happening at a time when we're seeing increased retirements, right? So as cops continue to retire, as those in the lower ranks move up through the system, what we're going to see is a translation into less cops on the street. It's just fact. It's math. And the members of the council, long before, when George Floyd was still alive, this debate was happening in the council 2 months ago. I remember it during the budget hearings when it seems to be the next borough president of your borough, Eric and Bob, was yelling and screaming at the top of his lungs that he didn't want another police academy class. He wanted to cut the next police academy classes. And I said that was insane, and I said it at the hearings. And all these guys go, oh no, that's crazy. We don't need any more cops. What do you mean we don't need any more cops? Of course we do. It's a 35,000 member department. They are retiring every day. Now they're retiring in droves. So fast forward 6 months, 8 months, a year from now, we're going to see less cops on the streets of our neighborhoods. And in a time of increased crime, Chaim, you and I Just 10 months ago, we were down at Police Plaza right before the Jewish holidays, right before Yom Tov, begging the chiefs to send us more cops because every day in our neighborhood, people were getting the life kicked out of them in anti-Semitic, vicious, violent crimes, and this was going on in September, October, November, December, January. It actually finally stopped when the pandemic happened and everybody got locked in their houses. But we were seeing the crime, and we were not seeing the increased police protection that we needed. And here we're talking about a scenario where we're going to cut even more cops off the street. It just makes no sense.
You know, who's a lawyer here? Kalman, I know you're a lawyer.
Eric's a lawyer.
And
Eric, are you a lawyer?
No, Eric's not.
You want my law degree? I'm not using it.
So Kalman's a lawyer. Now, the mayor announced his open street initiative, right? Like on Avenue K, Kalman, your district.
Oh, yeah.
They closed the streets there to give people open space.
Nobody was using it, by
Yeah,
the way.
of
It was
course.
hilarious.
Who
Nobody
wants to use space under the train trestle where you have all the birds pooping?
My girlfriend is a
But
lawyer.
anyway, let me just tell you that we never thought that part of his open street initiative is going to be at City Hall Park, where you have thousands of people there with tents. The place is filthy. It's disgusting. They tagged the surrogate courthouse. You should see what it says there.
These
It
beautiful
says
historic
the best
buildings.
The best cops are dead cops, right? Kill pigs, all kinds of disgusting things, and the mayor refuses even to clean it up. And
you actually voted, Chaim. You actually voted at the last stated from that location.
Yes, and I vote. Yes, and
that was unbelievable.
Yes, so what I did,
had the courage to do that.
yes, I got I went out of bed, and I got up to Zoom, and I went down to I parked my car in a safe spot so they don't turn it over, and I made sure I voted against the budget with thousands of people behind me booing me. Because I voted against the budget. And that was one of my proudest moments when I saw those agitators. And they're not even the people who represent BLM, Black Lives Matter. These are people that are getting paid from somewhere, someone, and somewhere, who knows where. They're not New York City residents.
Not New Yorkers.
They
They're not
tweet
New
at
Yorkers.
me 24 hours a day, and they don't even give me rest on the Shabbos. Like when I open my phone after Shabbos, I get these nasty tweets from them. All they want to do is disband the police department. They want to make our city turn into chaos,
They
which
want
it already
anarchy.
is. Everything.
They want anarchy. They want to destroy the civilized society that we have, the progress that we've made in this city in the last 20 years, since the late 80s, early 90s. The place where, if you remember, in 1993, 1994, when we were talking about 2,000 and change murders a year, they want to change that. And I don't know why anybody would, and it doesn't make sense, but they want to destroy New York City, and with that, the rest of the country.
Yeah, I put up we worked together to put up a sukkah at City Hall.
Yep.
It took 2 weeks. We had to beg for City Hall to allow us to put up a sukkah, right? And here they have people putting up tents, no permits,
Nope.
just throwing them up. The mayor's giving them carte blanche. They could do whatever they want. And you know something? If it's good for them, it's good for us. And enough is enough. And, we're going to have to, working together, we're going to have to take some type of stand and fighting back. And we need our listeners to call up their elected officials. And it's very simple. You go online. Who is my council member? And remember the 8 members who voted against the budget, including myself, is Councilman Yeger, Eric Ulrich, Bob Holden, Mark Jonai, Reuben Diaz, Steve Matteo, and Joe Borelli. And if these elected officials do not represent you, make sure if you live in other districts, call your council members. Don't let them lie to you. They're going to give you all excuses why we didn't defund the NYPD. They're going to tell you everything. Remember, $310 million of overtime got cut from the New York City Police Department. Now, what happens, we became a city of protests and a city of rallies and a city of people going out and marching all over the streets. We don't know how much overtime the New York City Police Department needs, right? It could be, we're cutting $310 million. People are leaving. People have 20 years on the job, and the last year they had overtime. They're leaving the job. So our attrition rate now is 2,000. We're going to see a lot more. And then officers age out. If you turn 63, you got to leave. You're out. And we're going to be left with nothing. And these liberals, these people, these agitators, I don't know what you call them, but we can't let them win. We need the people with common sense. We need those law-abiding citizens in this city to speak up. To speak up. Don't sit back and don't think that someone else will take care of all your problems. You need to speak up and speak out.
And when you think about, as I quoted Bill Bratton before, when you think about the fact that in a city of 8.5 million, 8 million and several 100,000 people are not committing crime. They're law-abiding. They're playing by the rules. They're paying their taxes. They're doing right. Some of us do a little better. Some of us do a little worse. We're contributing to society. We're trying to make New York a better place. The city is being overrun by just a few thousand criminals who are trying to destroy the city, and their associates, both in and out of government, who are doing the same. This is what we're happening. By the way, Chaim, to your point about the mayor cleaning up the graffiti on the surrogates court and on the municipal building,
yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why he should. Frankly, it's just going to get messed up again.
Well,
they're just going to spray it again. At this point, the chaos in Lower Manhattan is really he has given forth the city to those who want to destroy it. And there's no enforcement down there.
I'm ready to go to Gracie Mansion and with spray cans,
spray paint,
and let's do Blue Lives Matter, right? If it's good for them, it's good for us. No, let's do it. Let's get the Common Sense Caucus. Let's get together and let's do Blue Lives Matter in Gracie Mansion.
You have to check with the co-mayor. You know who the co-mayor is, right?
Yes.
Who's that?
Charlene.
Charlene. The mayor's wife. We just buy one, get one. We got de Blasio, now we got his wife calling the shots. That's what's wrong with this picture.
Well,
big problem. Come on.
Well, it's the only way. If it's good for them, it's good for us. And we need to go down there with spray cans and spray paint. Blue Lives Matter. That's it. All over Gracie Mansion.
It's
and
funny.
Let them worry about
it. Just a couple of days ago, they did the paint, obviously referring to the Black Lives Matter in front of Trump's building. And, I actually don't care if they do the message, don't do the message. It's meaningless to me. But how often do we beg DOT to come and fix something in the neighborhood? A pothole, put a speed bump. I have a list of speed bumps that I've been requesting that have been on the DOT list for a year and a half. Almost
Kalman,
office.
Kalman, I heard you wanted more bike lanes in your district.
Yes, well, I don't want more. No more bike lanes. But I will tell you that over the last couple of months, when non-essential work was canceled in the city, the essential work that I kept on seeing by DOT contractors was throwing up speed cams in every corner, every place that they could find a place to do it. Right now in Chaim, in my neighborhood, actually on a street where we split right down the middle, they're ripping up perfectly good sidewalks to put in less perfectly good sidewalks just cause they can. But they had this entire stretch of Fifth Avenue shut down immediately, just, at a whim to paint this thing. And then when it was vandalized, and it shouldn't have been vandalized, somebody did a bad thing, but then the next day they were there again to fix it. And I'm thinking about, well, I still have potholes, still not fixed, and you still can't get them to come, but this is your DOT. So, the priorities of the city are so out of whack with the realities of what the tax-paying, law-abiding citizenry are demanding, that it really begs the question of what is it that we're doing here? What's going on in this city?
Yeah, again, if you go down to City Hall Park, right, people are already talking to me. They want to have tour guides. People want to make money off it. You should see what's going on there. It's filthy. It's disgusting.
I'm not going there until they open the City Hall back up to the government.
But we need to take the mayor. We need to take the mayor out of Gracie Mansion and let him sleep there with them if he feels it's safe. Let him sleep there with
Kalman.
them.
Leave the graffiti up. It's really symbolic of de Blasio's administration.
And it's funny.
This is the monument to his administration.
Yeah, Bob, you're 100% right, and it's actually funny because a couple of years ago they renamed the municipal building. I'm sure you remember the David N. Dinkins Municipal Building, and they had this big sign there. And this sign was vandalized. The pillar that it's on was vandalized with vile graffiti. And I'm thinking, wow, what a monument to David Dinkins. He's whatever you think of him, whatever kind of mayor you thought he was, I wasn't a fan. He's the first black mayor of New York City. And this sign with his name on it that the mayor thought it made sense to name this building after David Dinkins was vandalized. Who are the people who are doing this? People with a complete lack of knowledge of the history of New York City. People who are not New Yorkers. They're coming to our city, they're destroying our city, the very fabric of our society, and they're doing it with impunity, with no fear whatsoever that they will be arrested. I'm thankful, by the way, we talked at the beginning of the program of the cops who were assaulted on the Brooklyn Bridge, but I saw a tweet from Commissioner Shea that they caught the guy, A couple of minutes ago, he tweeted that they caught the guy. So thank God they caught the guy.
Oh, that's good.
And I hope they throw the book at him. But, we have colleagues in the council, guys, that want to shut down the jails. They don't want anybody to go to jail.
No, but our colleagues in the council praise these individuals, these anarchists, that are protesting outside of City Hall, that are occupying City Hall. They praise them. They join them, which is, I couldn't believe it. We're told to shelter in. We're told to stay in. And then for months, and then what do? They run. Even the leadership of the city council goes out and protests in crowds, and I thought that was insane. How do you do that when you tell the rest of us to stay in? You shut our businesses, and then you praise the people out there. Even the mayor's daughter went out, and he praises her.
That's actually a great segue because look, Bob. The reality is that businesses are dying in this city. Restaurants are dying in this city. The governor is not allowing restaurants to have indoor dining. So even if you can seat 100 tables worth of people, you can't even have one table occupied in a restaurant right now. Businesses are dying. These are our taxpayers that are literally shutting down. And it's okay to have 10,000 people standing and screaming on a street corner, gilded along by their elected officials. I was fascinated to see footage during the marches of the public advocate, who of course has his own police detail, showing up at a time when we were all being told to stay inside. And yet our houses of worship can't open. Our schools can't open. Our sleepaway camps can't open. Our pools can't open. Nothing can open. But it's okay for 10,000 people to stand on a street corner yelling at the top of their lungs.
So I want to bring into the conversation here. I'm pleased to welcome my good friend Reuvain Borchardt, who is a reporter with the Hamodia. And Reuvain,
brilliant guy.
Yes, he's always in the front lines of reporting during the chaotic time here in our city, and he always holds the mayor his feet to the fire. So I want to welcome Reuvain. You're on the air.
Hi, Councilman. Thanks for sharing the stage with a member of the Fourth Estate.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit. You come up with great questions when you question the mayor, and the mayor's like every time, okay, Reuvain's next, and the mayor's ready for something, and he gives you like a Jewish answer to all your questions. But let's hear some of the things that, some of the questions you asked the mayor and what the response was to that, and how disturbing it is.
Well, one thing that Kalman mentioned was the graffiti. And I asked him about the video. This was on Friday. I asked him about the video, which shows the guy spraying graffiti and the cops doing nothing. And the mayor replies, graffiti is never acceptable. It will be addressed. And then he says that, you can see one video, and it doesn't mean that's what the reality is. And he even said, Reuvain, you ask that sort of question from time to time. He could have simply said, look, graffiti is wrong, and either that cop should have done something, and maybe the cop was wrong for not doing something, or it was a mistake. But he frequently answers this sort of thing. I asked him also about a video last week that showed people shooting fireworks at each other, and the cops driving by and doing absolutely nothing. And he's like, you see one video, that's not the reality. That's sort of a frequent answer of it, instead of simply saying the cops were right for doing nothing or the cops were wrong for doing nothing. He does this with other reporters as well. When they mention specific instances, he'll say, it's one video, you don't really know the story. Also, I asked him, another thing that was mentioned earlier on the show about the retirement, I asked him if, considering this wave of retirement, he might reconsider his canceling the incoming class, and his answer to me was, I don't think, and this is a quote, I don't think from what we're seeing right now that changes anything in our approach. Everything that we did in the budget, I think, was the right thing to do, and we're going to stick with that plan, unquote. So he's not changing from his plan, it doesn't seem.
So he's actually giving orders to the police department not to make arrests, and that is very disturbing. Last week I put a bill in the city council, and I'm hoping they're going to draft it, and that bill basically states that anyone in executive position, elected officials, someone like the mayor, that if they give orders to officers, to anyone in law enforcement not to do their jobs, then that would lead to an impeachment, and he would be charged with a misdemeanor. It would go to the Department of Investigations and the District Attorney's Office. And let's see how they draft that bill. But you're right, Bob, right? Go ahead.
He should. Anybody that says that you should not uphold the law, you should not enforce the laws, should be arrested, because he took an oath of office to uphold the laws of New York City, United States, and so forth. He took an oath of office. He's in violation of that oath by telling the cops to back off, That's how he should be impeached. And Eric, your legislation, your resolution should go forward.
Yeah, let's talk about your resolution, Eric.
Well, there are two. I don't know if you can hear me, but there are two resolutions in the council.
Well, let's talk about
Mine,
yours.
of course. Well, mine is the one that condemns the mayor not only for being incompetent during the COVID crisis, but for basically turning his back on the city of New York during one of the greatest crises that we've ever faced since probably 9/11. And I said that I wanted to have a vote of no confidence expressing the public's outrage and dissatisfaction, not only with the mayor's job performance, but with the fact that the city is basically on autopilot, and we're devolving into a state of lawlessness. I mean, when I saw the riots, looting on Broadway and Fifth Avenue, in some of the richest parts of the city, I just said my district is next. The rest of the city is next. The mayor is asleep at the switch. The police have been told to stand down, and the city is going to hell in a handbasket. So I put forward a resolution. The governor publicly amused and entertained that he has the legal authority under the Public Officers Law to remove a mayor from office. I said, let's put my colleagues on the record. Let's see if they stand with the mayor or they stand with the people that they were elected by, and the people in the city of New York who are really frustrated and upset with the direction of the city and the terrible job that Bill de Blasio is doing managing the situation right now.
So thank you, Eric. Let's go around one time, and what message do you want to give New Yorkers at this time? So let's start with Kalman. And what is the final message that that you want to give New Yorkers about what's going on?
I think New Yorkers need to know that there are members of the council who have their back, and who aren't afraid to stand up, who aren't afraid to speak the truth. Look, I've been on this program in the past and said, I've talked about things that have happened in the council, things that I said that are truth, and when people don't like the truth, when it comes from the wrong, quote-unquote, political spectrum, they condemn it. But the fact is there are some members who are willing to stand up, who are willing to vote for lower taxes, who are willing to vote for more public safety, who are willing to vote for services to their communities, for cleaner streets, for safer streets, for better education. And then there are members who talk a big talk, like the member that Chaim didn't want to name, but I'm happy to, Councilman Yeger. And then, from the north of my district, the gentleman from Park Slope who thinks that it's okay for him to have cops, but not okay for Brownsville to have cops, Brad Lander. And, there are members like that all over the city that are so happy to destroy a city. I lived in this city my whole life. I was born here. I've only lived in 2 zip codes my entire life. I love the city. I'm so honored to have a chance to serve it. But we are a small minority. We need New Yorkers to stand up, like Chaim said at the beginning of the show and throughout. Enough is enough. Stand up, say it, vote it. Enroll in the Democratic Party because that's where the choices are made in the Democratic primaries. And vote. Vote. You have to vote. Don't just call and complain, and don't just sit at home and complain, and certainly don't sit at home and cower under your bed because of the violence in the city. Get up, speak up, vote. Bob and I, Eric and I, we always talk about there's a silent majority in the city. There still is. There are 8 million and a couple of 100,000 people every day who are not committing crimes, who want to do well in the city. They need to stand up. They need to say something. And we're here. We have your back. We need you to have ours.
And Kalman, they will stand up. It's just when we're pushed so far, and now I think you're seeing a turnaround. You're seeing pro-cop protests and rallies. You're seeing more of that. You're seeing people say, enough's enough. A baby getting killed, a 1-year-old baby out getting shot in the stomach and killed because of this random violence. You think people are going to put up with this much longer? No. And we have to elect law and order elected officials, people that like the cops. I mean, since I got on the council, I can't believe how many council members are against the police, are against correction officers. I don't get it. It's like the bizarro world. It's upside down, where good is evil and evil is good. But these are the elected officials we put in office. And thank God for the Common Sense Caucus that we've formed, because we know what is right. We know how to legislate, we know what we need in New York City, and we certainly don't need the likes of Bill de Blasio and this progressive body politic that just is getting their, obviously their budgets off of protest signs. Where'd that $1 billion defunding the police, where'd that come from? A protest sign. That's where it came from. This is the absurdity in New York City now. And by the way, everybody remembers when Bill de Blasio was against cutting the police by $1 billion, right?
Yeah, and the city council, we also hired the cop just a few years ago.
Right. Everybody remembers, and Bill de Blasio was actually doing what before him Mayor Bloomberg did, and before him Mayor Giuliani did, in getting the police to do the right thing. We had the greatest police force in the world until de Blasio just gutted it. And he gutted it by his rhetoric, and he allowed the protesters to have their way. So now officers, even if we have more officers, they're demoralized. You have to build them up now. You have to praise them. He hasn't praised them. That's why he doesn't want the cops to enforce the laws. He doesn't want the cops to enforce graffiti.
It took 30 hours for him to issue a condemnation of the attacks yesterday. One of the councilmen mentioned earlier, it wasn't until 4:15 p.m. this afternoon that he did. When the reporters contacted City Hall for a comment from the mayor, they got a 2-sentence statement from the press secretary, and only the second half of the second sentence mentioned the condemnation. It took him 30 hours and a lot of pressure to actually issue a public tweet. During the same time period, he issued 11 tweets about police reform.
Yeah, Reuvain, that's why we need you. You have all the information.
Hey, Reuvain, you want to run for the city council?
So,
No. I think I'm fine where I am. Thank you.
Eric, what's your message? What's your message, Eric, to the listeners?
Well, I think, look, if people are frustrated with the direction of the city, they're not happy with Bill de Blasio, they're very upset with the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Socialist Democrats have basically hijacked the Democratic Party in big cities like New York, and they're leading us off the cliff. They've got to register and they've got to vote. And I know that people think that their vote may not mean anything, or that their participation in the process may be drowned out by the louder voices that we see on television or in the media. But the point is that the more people that stay home and the more people that don't get involved, the more you empower these leftist lunatics who just want to tear down every single institution and thing that's holding this country and this city together. And I don't mean to get prophetic or anything, and I don't want to preach about politics, about Democrat or Republican or anything like that. But what I do want to say is that people have to get involved. They've got to vote their values. They've got to bring with them to the ballot box the issues that matter to them and their families and their livelihoods and their businesses and their communities. Because by you not getting involved and by you not actively taking part in the process, you're letting these leftist, crazy, radical, communist, socialist Democrats.
Exactly, and this is, Eric, this is something...
take over the city.
This is something that my co-host, Fegi Zakam, has been working on, like really letting people know and educating people how they must register to vote and go out to vote, Fegi, right?
I'm just blown away by all of this. I'm just listening to this, and I'm thinking, why isn't your caucus, this common sense caucus, on the front pages of every single newspaper?
We're very, very shy, Faye. We're very shy.
Don't be, because all of us are, I hate to say it, but all of us are leaving the city. I'm out of the city, my colleagues are out of the city, and even my alleged colleagues at NYU that claim to be progressive, they're not staying in the city. They're all out in the Hamptons. Everybody's running away.
Exactly.
The real reason is, honestly, I mean, I was in jest on the shyness, but because I don't think the listeners think I'm shy or Chaim shy, and surely Bob and Eric are not shy.
No, I'm shy. I'm shy.
but the reality is, the media, Faye, the media is part of the problem. The media is part of the problem. They are on that wing and faction of the body politic. They are part of the problem. They sympathize with the anarchists. Read the New York Times editorial pages.
That part you said earlier about when the crime hits the Hamptons, then they will wake up and they'll realize what is going on and the anarchy that's existing. It's really easy to be a big talker when you're out in the Hamptons listening to what's going on in the Bronx.
And
but once it hits them,
it's
scary, and it will hit them.
Fege, we don't have any shootings in our area, and just a few days ago we had a shooting on Shore Parkway, and you're right, it's going to spill over. And I
just want to say before, but I have to hop off the call.
We actually have a minute left. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to take 10 seconds. I just want to say thank you for being a bipartisan partner in government, for doing a great job, not only advocating for your constituents in your community, but for being a strong ally for people, the forgotten New Yorkers, the people that I represent and Bob represents in Queens County. You and Kalman are really terrific legislators, but also you are strong advocates for the forgotten middle class and the taxpayers and the law-abiding citizens in this city. I'm proud to call you a friend, but I think you do a terrific job as a councilman. Your constituents are lucky to have you, and I'm proud to have you as a friend. So I just want to say thank you.
Same here.
Thank you. So with that, I do want to thank Councilman Bob Holden, Eric Ulrich, and Kalman Yeger, and the Reuvain Borchardt, reporter for the Hamodia. So thank you all for joining, and my co-host, Dr. Faye Zakheim. I'll probably see you over the weekend. So until next week, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos to all.
Thank you.